So in the year 2013-ish, 2014, I met a lady who was one of my supervisors at my job. And to me, she was one of my favorite people in the world. She helped me during a time in which I was very needy. That was after the Kansas trip, if you guys remember my story. Of course, she put some resources together for me. She legit gave me things like house things, food here and there. She even gave me a ride home a few times when mom had to keep my car at the time. She was overall such an amazing human being. It's kind of like that one person in a management position that you inevitably begin to associate as a mother kind of figure. So I always said that she was my work mom. Something that I learned about her is that at some point, not too long after that, she was going through a divorce. And I remember that at the time I met her, she was still married and she still referenced her husband. But I want to say it was about a year or two after she left the store, she at some point got a divorce. I just remember that she left town and then I had her on my Facebook, and next thing I know, eventually she posted that she was now divorced and she even changed her last name. One of the things I learned about her is that she really had a thing for biker guys. And at the time, I didn't think about this, but a couple of years prior to that, more like a year and a half, maybe 2 years prior to that, there was a guy I had known from school, and somehow we stayed connected. I don't remember how, but I just remember that I think it was one of my friends gave him my number or he was on my Facebook. I sincerely don't remember. I just know that he reached out one day out of nowhere, out of the blue, and was asking me if I had any plans, if I wanted to do something. And I said, well, I think I'm in a plan for the next month because I was visiting my family, therefore I was traveling. And then he said that whenever I got back, we could do something. Well, this is a guy who I never really felt anything toward, no attraction, barely any respect, honestly. I respected him because, of course, he's a person and whatnot, but I always told myself that I couldn't see myself being involved with this person in a serious manner. Hanging out in controlled settings was fine, but he's one of those people who you observe and you know that you're not like them, so you just don't mind them so much. But the fact that he was reaching out, I thought, well, I always like to give everybody an opportunity, and of course I gave it to him, and it sounded like he was interested in dating, but I personally never felt anything toward him. Anyway, one of his defining traits was he had a bike, a motorbike, just to be clear. Around that time, with a friend of mom's, I had my experience with riding a motorcycle. It was about a year prior to him. Initially, I told him, hey, I'm not very comfortable with that. Motorcycles are stupidly, unnecessarily dangerous, and I don't like how I just don't have control, and I don't know. I'm not so sure. And he said, well, I'm a very safe driver, and I know how you are. I wouldn't put you through something I didn't feel you would be uncomfortable with. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So I gave it a try, and it was nice. He didn't do anything stupid. We had to stop briefly because it began to drizzle. So we stopped at some gas station until it passed. And I never really thought about it. I said, well, what's the problem with rain? And it makes sense that if we are on the highway, that those drizzles could feel like stings. Something weird was that, okay, at the time we were talking, I sincerely don't remember about what, because it wasn't really an impactful relationship to me. And then he was trying to be a little touchier than I was used to. Nothing inappropriate. It was just more about being cuddly and hugging, more like holding me kind of thing. And if I don't like you, it takes me a minute to grow into that. But at the time, since the mood was like a calm one. I said, all right, I'll allow something like that. And then I said to myself, even though I'm getting ready to go meet his family, he had a brother. I remember that, a younger brother. And I think they might have had yet another brother or sister. I sincerely don't remember. I remember I met his mom. And these are folks who financially, at least what I saw superficially and based off where they lived, they are people who are relatively well off. And you guys know that that is something that I'm not comfortable with because that's not the social class I belong to. That's not my society. I said, okay, right off the bat, I can tell that I'm not going to fit in here because I think it's best if you get with someone who you just match with. And like I've said before, it's one of those things where my intuition, even 15, 20 years ago, has always been so strong that I didn't need to experience a lot of things to know that something just wasn't right for me. Anyway, I just knew that I wasn't wild about the fact that A, the vibe I was getting, it wasn't the right one. B, he already had quite an extensive dating history. C, I wasn't wild about the fact that he was in a bike and stuff. And D, I couldn't imagine myself revealing my intimacy to this person. And that's one way I know whether you're like dating material or not. Another thing he had going for him is that he was a musician. He was legit interested in music and he had some skill, especially vocally. There were a lot of sounds he could make and achieve that were genuinely funny, and that's what I enjoyed him for. I enjoyed him as that friend that you can have some good laughs with because he's got that kind of sense of humor. But I just knew that this thing wasn't gonna go anywhere. And I think we went out, it was just that one time, that one night. And after that, it was pretty much over. I'm like, good, because I just looked at this as, okay, hanging out with someone as friends, but it was clear that he was expressing he wanted to progress things, and I definitely wasn't there. But I think in his mind, he was just ready to process things. And he said that something he liked about me was my personality, that I was totally drama free, and this is coming from the guy who is involved in drama things as a career interest. But I know what he meant. At some point, he messaged me saying that he was moving up north. I think it was to New York. And he said, just to let you know, I'm leaving because I'm the kind of guy who follows the money. And I'm like, good for you. I think he thought he owed me that explanation because maybe in his mind he thought we were progressing. Maybe in his mind he thought that maybe I could get somewhere with him, even though I knew for a fact that nothing was ever gonna happen there. Or maybe it's just politeness. But to me, if you're someone I'm just hanging out with, like casually, say we're just friends going out to eat something and then hang out, just chatting, but there really isn't much personal things going on, then I don't give a shit where you go to tomorrow. I really don't. You're nothing to me. You don't mean anything to me. You contribute nothing to my life except helping me pass the time. I don't care. So anyway, he was telling me he is moving and sorry babe, I'm the kind of person who follows the money. And I'm like, why are you calling me babe? That is so weird. That happened, he left, and after that I never heard from him again, and I feel great about it because, again, it was one of those instances in which I'm involved in the situation because I don't have anything going for me, honestly. At the time, I never got to go out, and I was trying pretty much to trying to try things, even though I knew that those are things that didn't go with me. That was that story. I don't think I've ever shared that before. Maybe I may have briefly mentioned him, but anytime I think about official relationships I have had, he is never in the picture. I never remember him. I never think about him. I remember him once in a while if I see something that maybe has his last name, or maybe if it was something like a vocal skill that I knew he had that maybe I hear and it reminds me of it, something like that. There was that, and I just remember telling myself that I just cannot get on board with things that aren't meant for me. And I was just glad that I had that experience because it, I guess, strengthen my intuition. So I wanted to give you that entire preamble so that you have A, another anecdote about me, and B, so that I can expose the experiences I have with the biking culture, which is very little. I was surprised to hear that my brother has a motorcycle license. One of the things he said to me when he moved back here briefly was, "You need to get one." And I'm like, "No, I don't." As a kid, I loved motorcycles. I always envisioned myself as an adult doing motorcycles, but something changed in me, something happened to me, maybe practicality settled in, and I said, I'm not interested in owning or riding a motorcycle. I watch Attorney Tom. One of the funniest things he has ever said that I love is when it's pertinent, he'll go, "Do not ride motorcycles. Motorcycles are dangerous." I get it because it's one of those things that, yeah, cars still kill people. But I think that your chances are greater in a car than in a motorcycle. And on top of that, the motorcycle is relying on your sense of balance. And there's just some stuff that could disrupt that. I'm not going to get too deep into it. But basically, motorcycles do not impress me. That is one of the things that you need to know. I wonder if this guy that I just told you guys about maybe was trying to use the fact that he had a motorcycle and maybe he was able to lure people with it. Maybe he was trying to use that as one of his appeals. And I told myself, well, as you can understand, I already expressed the fact that sure, I love motorcycles, but I don't like the idea of me being on them. Anyway, if that's what he was hoping for, using something material to be impressive, clearly when he said that he follows the money, he is a material person. That completely goes against me. That was another symptom that we weren't clicking. Now, the inspiration for this very topic came from me learning of something about bike talk. And basically, it's guys who have motorcycles, and I guess they make that their identity, their culture, and that's what I guess they use as a feature. And that also took me back to how during my childhood, one of my cousins, who was a late teen at the time, she was around 18, 19, she had this boyfriend who is also the father of her first child. And I vividly remember that he was into motorcycles, very into motorcycles. And I remember that he had it was either a Facebook or a MySpace, but he had a picture of a motorcycle and him in motorcycles. And he was that kind of guy. He was the kind of guy who just knew about housekeeping and mechanic stuff, cars, that kind of culture. That was his thing. And superhero stuff here and there that I could recall. And I think that maybe, again, that was one of the things that lured my cousin. My cousin, I can certainly say, is very impressionable. And what I remember about this guy is that when I think back to what I remember him looking like, and now myself grown up, I can understand that he was also physically attractive. Even as a kid, I knew that something about him was special. Something about him was different, from the way he dressed, the way he performed like self-care. He was more caring about his appearance. His hair was on point, just little details like that. He was you could say a high maintenance but yet humble guy at the same time. In my personal opinion, I think my cousin is the one who messed up that relationship. And I remember that one time we were all hanging out at the mall. He got mad at her because he gave her money to buy snacks and stuff, and she bought some for herself, and I think they had their kid at the time, and the kid, of course, even though he had told her to pick something up, maybe a soda or something, she didn't. And then I remember that he got upset and he tried to discreetly express his annoyance, his frustration. But at the same time, he was letting it known that her behavior was just unacceptable. And I can understand. Again, that is another way that I have been involved with motorcycles. I remember that he had a motorcycle, but I vaguely remember what it looked like or what he looked like in it. But I think that at some point, of course, after they had the kid, he had to be driving more. But I just remember when that guy would come over, it was always a fun time. It was always a good time. And he was so helpful with mom. He would even help her make food and clean the house, everything. He was a stellar guy. So my cousin letting him go or not taking care of him was really messed up. So there's that. Now, with bike talk, something I learned is, again, that I guess anything can draw a person towards you. Say, if you're a computer nerd, then maybe someone will be into you for that. If you're a car geek, then someone is going to be into you for that. If you are into fitness, dieting, things like that, it's like categories of people. And I get it because you want to ideally get involved with people who are similar to you, you have similar interests, but I also think that when you enclose yourself in a box, sometimes I feel like that may hinder your ability to expand on other things. And I think that you have to be just as comfortable hanging out outside of that box as well as within the safety that such a box brings you. And all I have to say about bikers, bike talk, or whatever it is that I couldn't get into it. That would not be the key to my heart for you to leave an impression on me or anything. But I just wanted to share that even when I knew my supervisor and when I hung out with that one guy and when I had my cousin's boyfriend way back in the day, being into those things, that motorcycles, even as cool as I found them to be and fun, is not something that impressed me a lot. It's not something that I felt was important for me to pursue. And even my brother having his license, which I had no idea about, and him trying to convince me to get one and whatnot, I'm like, that is something you do. That is something you wanted. You got it. Good for you. But don't try to get me mixed in with that type of thing, because it's simply not what I am or who I am or what I need or what I'm pursuing, anything like that. So just don't worry about me. That's what you do. Just do your thing. Maybe find people you can share that hobby with, but don't try to use that as a manipulative tactic. Like, well, I'm special because I'm a biker. I'm special because I have a motorcycle, or two or three or four or five. And the motorcycle people are deemed as hot for some reason, or we tend to be in better shape because, I mean, you should for the performance of your vehicle, things like that. And I just thought I would opine, which I had to share those stories of how I got into motorcycles in the first place, what I know about them, because I personally don't have much real interest in them outside of, as a kid, I thought they were cool. They were in movies and they're fun looking, but when you grow up, you just realize that they're not practical, and you become even more aware of dangers that lurk in those things. I also remember that mom had a coworker who died many years ago because he forgot to check some chain or something, and as he was writing it something happened. It had to do with that chain because it was the one time he didn't check it. There was something wrong with it, and anyway, he got in a wreck and somehow he just died. And I think it was so bad that they couldn't even take off his helmet, something like that, if I remember right. And yeah, it shocked everybody because everybody was like, well, this guy, he always checked his motorcycle very carefully, and the one time he didn't, this happens, he was in a rush. The lamentation, the lamenting taking place, and that's something that I personally just never understand. If you have that routine, no matter what's happening, what's urgent, just make sure that you get to places late, but you don't risk not making it at all. And at least my brother, I have faith that he will never break from his habit of checking every inch of his aircraft every time he goes flying. Your life is literally riding on it. Riding on it. But yeah, you guys, I thought I would create a motorcycle topic so that I could share some stories, some anecdotes, and so that I could go ahead and tell you that yes, I loved them. I think they're cool. They're a nice invention. I think that Honda has the better looking ones. I used to think Kawasaki's were the better ones back in the day, and from what I remember my mom telling me, my uncle had one way back in his day. And yeah, something in me changed to where I just favor Hondas more. If I had to, for whatever reason, pick a motorcycle to rely on, I would probably go with a Honda. And I do believe that they're comparable to Toyo when it comes to vehicles and their quality. And can you guys believe that at least I personally cannot think, maybe as an infant I might have, but I don't think I have ever personally ever been in a Honda. I have no memory of seeing the logo on the steering wheel. I have no memory of ever just stepping into a Honda. And I find that insane. Maybe an SUV style kind of Honda, but even then, I don't think so. I remember being in Ford Explorers, but I have no memory of being on a Honda at all. Maybe my mom's friend who had the bike, maybe that was a Honda, but I don't remember seeing the word Honda anywhere, nor the motorcycle logo. Nothing. I don't think I've ever ridden a Honda at all. And I realized that some 2 years ago when I was talking to a friend about cars in general. And I said, you know what, something that's been disturbing me? I dead ass don't think I've ever been in a Honda. So that is something I'm interested in fixing. So maybe one day, you guys better believe that if I get my hands on a Honda, I'm gonna make a video about it. And my brother, he did have a Honda that he wrecked, but since he wasn't living close by, I didn't get to experience that. And then my boyfriend also says that his first car was a Honda. And I think that the Honda, especially a late 90s Honda Civic, is like every guy's starter pack, like rite of passage into adulthood and driving and stuff, because I feel like every guy I've ever met always started off with the Honda. Anyways, I was almost born in a Corolla and I happen to drive a Corolla, so I guess Corollas are my legacy. So anyways, you guys, yeah, this was more of a motorcycle rambling story, but also to express how they do nothing to me. They mean nothing to me. So don't try to invite me into an activity that involves a motorcycle, because you will get rejected maliciously. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know if you have experiences of your own, or maybe you are a biker yourself. Feel free to pour your heart out in the comments. I will read it, and yeah, I'll see you soon. If I have anything more to say about motorcycles, I'll let you know. But I just remember seeing that bike talk clips that someone had on a YouTube video, and I thought, oh, I forgot that motorcycle appeal is a thing. So I was grateful that that just randomly came up on that video, and I learned about all of the communities that are on TikTok and how I'm so glad I'm not part of that dreadful app, and I will never be. But it's weird that TikTok influences YouTube so much now. So in a sense, even though I'm not a direct consumer of TikTok, I'm still consuming TikTok through YouTube. Oh! Anyways, I'll see you soon.